But otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Mortvedt, and he's going to give us an introduction to the program. He's brought some colleagues along to highlight some of the challenges, pitfalls, common mistakes that happen post-disaster when it comes to insurance claims, insurance coverage, frauds and scams, and all of those types of things that we've seen. We've had a couple of disasters here lately with apartment fires, so maybe some questions on rental insurance as well. But I'll turn it over to Matt. He'll take us through the program, and we'll get some Q&A time in at the end.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. My name's Matt Mortvedt. I'm the bureau chief with the Iowa Insurance Fraud Bureau. Brought on a couple individuals. I'll let them introduce themselves real quick.
Jeremy Hill, I'm a special investigator with the Insurance Fraud Bureau.
David Sullivan, I'm the bureau chief for the Market Regulation Bureau. So an Iowa consumer has a complaint. Our bureau takes those, resolves it, attempts to resolve it with the insurance carrier. And then if there are regulatory violations, we also investigate those. And anybody that's licensed to do business in Iowa, we have jurisdiction over them from a regulatory compliance process versus criminal.
Yeah, so we came here to talk a little bit a bit about our disaster response today, some of the things that we have available that we can offer you, as well as kind of go over some of the things that didn't work for us at first, because I think as important it is to share successes, it's just as important to share failures. So pitfalls and recovery in the wake of severe weather. Our disaster response dates back to Greenfield. Since the derecho, we were looking at what we could do to respond to these natural disasters and provide citizens with what they needed to recover quickly. So it was kind of an idea that we were moving around year after year. And then finally we had the Greenfield incident. And I think like everybody, we wanted to do something. So we loaded up and we drove there with a sort of plan that we were going to canvass the area and that we were going to inform town residents about, what the insurance division does, how we can help you, and to deter any type of insurance fraud. So we came into town and set up in the town square. And the first thing that we were going to do is a neighborhood canvas. So we had these packets that we made up that explained to people, when someone approaches, you don't have to sign a contract right away. Be on the lookout for these signs. Here's some resources to contact about your policy. If you have questions about your policy, here's where we are. The problem with that, one of the, I won't call them failures, but learning points is when you went into Greenfield, this is a picture I took at one of my first houses I went to. 4 pages up for you. There was no way to discern what house belonged to what property. In fact, I think David and I were walking down the first street and there was a house on what we thought was an empty lot. And it actually had blown from across the street and sat on the lot. So one thing we learned, we needed a way to accurately track how many houses were there. We've been playing around with software like Orion to help gather information that we all can use. So that was one learning point. Our second one, and this is not my video, but just to give you an idea, this is footage from the Greenfield tornado as it comes across these power lines. And ultimately collides with these windmills. You could just see the power that it brought with it when you can see the blades just being torn off the windmill. So we realized rather quickly that we were not always going to have power. This was a substantial power loss. It was out for a significant amount of time. So we knew if we wanted to help people, we needed to be able to respond with some type of capability to provide them power. Especially with this day and age, if you're going to file an insurance claim, very rarely do you drive to the office and fill out a paper form or mail a form. Everything's online, your policy's online. You'll have some sign in, so we need power to access those. And then we also learned that we needed reliable communications. When we went to town, we planned on using our cell phones. Well, that didn't exactly work because if you saw what it did to that windmill, you can imagine what it did to cell phone towers in the area. So what we've done now is we've contracted with AT&T FirstNet. So we have priority bandwidth. We also have our push to talk through them with talk groups that we can add different entities too, that when we get into town. And we also have the ability that within 24 hours of responding to a disaster, if there are no internet capabilities, they will bring a portable tower out to us so that we're able to connect consumers with their insurance company. As well as the generator, we can charge devices and have them access online. For those of you on state radio, we've also set up access. We carry state radios with every major station throughout the state. So I can let Jeremy touch on that if I missed anything.
Yeah, we can, so with the FirstNet, the push talk will all operate on all teams channel. That way we can kind of communicate with that. It also allows us GPS so we can see where everybody's at by whoever has the FirstNet phones. So kind of how we split it up is all the officers have the FirstNet phones, management, market rate, we got them kind of like a portable phone, but it looks like just like a portable that they'll use when they go out. But we all communicate on the same channel so that we're not interrupting anybody else. And then all law enforcement officers will have the state radio. So we get on any, state patrol. We can get a hold of any county, city, just like any other radio. It works just the same.
So basically what we did is we took all these things that were the shortfalls that we had, and we developed our disaster relief trailer. You'll notice there's two doors up front. The door in the rear is market regulation, which is Dave's department, which is helping consumers understand their policies, and he'll go into that as we go along. The front is designated for law enforcement. So we would have an intelligence analyst that's housed in there to help plan our operations. If we assist with law enforcement, we could have meetings in there. It's sight and sound separate from the other end of the trailer. And then inside this, we store some emergency items. We obviously have medical supplies. We store our packets that we go door to door with, which include things that we made notes of when we were going around Greenfield people might need. So non-perishable food, snack, some water. We have the ability to pass out power banks that were sponsored through the International Associations of Special Investigators for the insurance companies. So we have portable power packs they can have, headlamps, gloves, flashlights. So things that we noted that people needed as we are going through Greenfield.
The good thing about the trailer we found now that we're taking it, throughout the state, and we've had a few deployments now, having that power source, it's heated, it's cooled. We have lighting on the outside of it as well. If it gets too much, we have so much people, we can, we obviously put the awning out. If it's nice outside, we can use the people outside of the trailer as well. There's also a ramp in the back of the trailer on the market rig side. So if we have a wheelchair or something like that, and we need to get somebody inside the trailer, that way they walk home, we can accommodate that. So it's just, I can't speak enough about the trailer. It's just nice to have an area to work out of.
Yeah, and like Jeremy was saying, it's really handy when you go to an area that has that power. Like in Greenfield, it was pretty hot a lot of those days, and especially equipment running pretty close to people. When you're trying to sit in a grass square and talk, and Dave's trying to talk to someone about their insurance coverage, it's not the most pleasant atmosphere for them. So we developed this trailer so that consumers and victims would have a comfortable place to do that. So what we bring here is we obviously bring our trailer, the ability to canvass neighborhoods. I have 9 sworn special investigators and 1 intelligence analyst. And then we also bring the access to insurance related resources. So in Greenfield, within 24 hours, we actually had aerial photos of the damage in the storm track. Pretty detailed photos. Now, those aren't ones that we can just widely distribute, but I will tell you they're as accurate as we were looking at a storm in Marshtown one time for a fraudulent claim on a fence, and you could see the individual pickets of the fence and which ones had fallen down. So they're very good cameras, and it helps us develop the path that we're going to take when we do our canvases. We also have access to claims data that we can use to report statistics to the governor's office. So the future and kind of where we see we're going. It's been the past couple of years, we've seen an increase in the severity of the weather events. So there's been a lot of high dollar claim in Iowa. So obviously, in order to continue to provide coverage, the insurance companies are going to adjust their rates accordingly to cover those losses. So when we see some contractors coming in and maybe they're inflating the claim or people are filing fraud, that directly affects all of us and the insurance climate in Iowa. Believe it or not, and the insurance economy in Iowa is actually ranked above GDP for agriculture. So it's a big business. Dave, I think there's 200 and some companies domiciled in Iowa, 200 major insurance companies that call Iowa home. So we want to make sure that when people need insurance, it's there for them. So when we see this fraud occurring or things like that, we're on it. Also what we're experiencing right now is changes in Iowa law and increased enforcement. We are very active. We are very aggressive about defending Iowans. So when we go to these storm scenes, if we detect fraud, we will do what we can to deter that. What we're starting to see now is when we go to these disaster areas, we have some really good contractors that call Iowa home. And I'm not going to say that all the ones coming from out of state have bad intentions, but what we do find is there's a lot that come from out of state to try to get money and take off. So with our increased enforcement, it's unusual. We responded to one city and I believe there was 20 contractors there. Within an hour, there are 6 left. Everyone just left. So I think you're going to see that a lot. We're very active on social media to let people know we're coming to the area. And that eases resources off the community. During these responses, we often see law enforcement, especially like troopers in Greenfield, where people are coming up and trying to ask questions about the insurance process. Well, now they have a place to send that and sit down and talk. So that really eases some of the strain.
What we're able to do with the trailer, it's obviously you can see it's very visible, so they know we're there. That helps a lot. We're able to make contact as far as I usually go using all the addresses, so we'll make sure we're focusing in on the right area, so that we're using multiple different enforcement ways to be able to, stop the fraud that might occur, or at least help deter a lot of it. So.
Another thing that has, technology is great, but it also has some of its downfalls. So what we've noticed in a lot of these recent disasters is there appears to be a high influx of out-of-state contractors that are in town within hours or the next morning after a weather event. And what we found is they're using programs like Hail Trace and these other programs that will tell them not only is there damage within like blocks, it'll show the damage, where it occurred, what size hail, what size wind, and the darker the color, obviously, the more likely they're going to get the claim approved. So they know very specifically where to go. So there's been instances like in Nevada last year. We talked to a consumer. They got a storm the night before. He woke up in the morning to something on his roof, came outside before he even been outside for the day, and a contractor came down and said, "Here's your estimate." That's how quickly they were there within the next day. So what we do is we use some of that technology for our benefit. We have the ability to look at those areas and be able to contact individuals in those areas via text message before some of those individuals arrive, and we send them a text, and all it says is make sure that you do your homework with the contractor. Look for reputable contractors and don't sign anything. Don't feel pressure to sign anything. So that kind of helps consumers make choices, better choices when it comes to signing, because there is some high pressure sales.
The good thing about it is it's targeted information. So we know the area, we can put out a message in that area and at least start that initial contact with the people to be looking out for these things, and then follow up with the enforcement side and responding.
And with those messages is a link to receive updates regarding the storm. Let's say the insurance companies are going to set up an insurance village. So if someone subscribes to that text, they'll know, hey, this company, hey, do you want to come meet with them? They're going to be here, things like that. Also, changing landscape. So not only are we seeing increases in prices, but we're also seeing a lot of people surprised with reduction in coverage. We saw that in Kingsley last week, multiple times.
Yes.
Where people got their policy out assuming they were gonna get full coverage, replacement on a roof, and, last year it was changed to ACV only, which means they're just giving them that initial value, not the recoverable loss, and so they're having to make up that difference. So that's another thing we're seeing a lot of is just reduction in coverage and higher deductibles, things like that. This is just a headline that came out of our increased enforcement. So there's two types of groups we usually see that respond to these disasters: public adjusters and contractors. They are both distinctly different roles. So a contractor is there to make repairs, submit an estimate, things like that, not negotiate with the insurance company on the claim. That's a public adjuster's job that we license. So I just wanted to bring that up, that we have made some arrests in this and things like that, because it is a Class D felony in Iowa if you're acting as a public adjuster without a license, and it does cause consumer harm. So when you get into town, it's very important. A public adjuster can't be a contractor on the same claim, vice versa. So we're just in there making sure that people are abiding by those rules. Oh, this is a screenshot from Hail Trace. So you can see the mapping with the different color lines. And if I clicked on that, it would have consumer photos of the hail that hit their house. And if it's a meteorological report, it'll show the storm indicated size of the hail, the actual size indicated of the hail, the wind direction, if it was any tornadic activity. And you can click on that and it'll give you a National Weather Service report to provide with your estimate. So it's really pretty dialed in. It's a very nice tool, but it can be used for people to know where to respond to try to get as many claims as they can and take off with money. We talked a little bit about policy. These are the common issues we ran into in Kingsley last time regarding policies. And that's that the homeowner hasn't read the changes or policy. So RCV to ACV policies, deductible based on peril. So maybe your deductible is still $1,500 or $1,000, but if it's hail damage now, it's X% of the total claim you pay for the deductible. We also see, I would say, a little steeper depreciation where if that roof's 15 years old, it can be on you at this time. So they're not going to cover aged properties. We also ran into an issue in Kingsley where an individual received a cancellation notice and no one would cover him. So before he could secure coverage, his building was destroyed. One thing we ran into, responded down in the Ottumwa area is these could probably be one of the same long-term family properties. Someone's occupied a family residence or something like that. It's unclear who is purchasing insurance for the property. Then a storm happens and they realize nobody had insurance on the property. And then we had an incident with a contract purchase where someone was buying a home on contract. They didn't discuss in the contract who was purchasing the insurance. And once again, the house had no coverage. So we like to tell her to go back to whatever groups you're with. The best time to check your policy is right now and make sure it's covering what you want it to cover. And the best time to select a roofing contractor is before the storm. We have fantastic roofing contractors, construction contractors in Iowa. Do it when you don't have the pressure and your home doesn't have damage.
One thing some of the towns are doing, they're creating a list of, they're vetting contractors before. So if something happens, then you have a list that their citizens can reference. And we've seen that.
One thing to know, yes, I call it dial Iowa licensing and appeals. They have a registration for a contractor, but they're not vetting them. You know, if I go out there and put in David Sullivan contracting, the state of Iowa hasn't done anything except probably take some money from me. They've not vetted me. They haven't verified insurance. Yes, I'm registered to do business within the state of Iowa. Maybe I have something with the Secretary of State, but the state has done nothing to vet me, license me, verify. So a roofing contractor is way different than a plumber or an electrician. There's boards for those. They have to pass certain requirements and get continuing education. That's not the same for the roofers. So can be a huge gap in who you're hiring. So it's so important for that consumer to vet who they're hiring. Because if money is walked away, if the insurance company's paid you, you pay to a contractor and they steal it from you, the insurance company's not writing another check. They paid their claim. That's all they're gonna do.
And that's a great lesson that we had in Greenfield is, the municipalities need to check their peddler's permit. I'd say Greenfield had something that was kind of typical of some small towns. They made their peddler permit cost, I think it was $500, which is to deter solicitation, the door to door. Well, when you have a disaster, you want to get contractors in there. So, in the middle of the night, they're able to get model policies and reduce that rate. But with that, they implemented criminal background checks, proof of insurance, things like that to help vet those contractors. And the people that were there to do the work did that process with no problem. And I will tell you, it makes a big difference. I think in Greenfield, we had one referral for insurance fraud. The derecho, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So that presence makes a big difference. Some people ask what fraud associated with disasters, and it's pretty simple for the false claims. When you have a disaster such as Greenfield, the insurance companies have a very high claim volume. So it's pretty easy to try to sneak one of those false claims in with the mix and just have it slide through. We actually had a case out of Marshalltown with an individual who owned rental houses. And that was kind of his MO. A disaster would happen. He would make fake invoices. He would send them in. They would get paid. And we ended up securing a federal indictment on that. And he went to federal prison for 21 months. We also see people trying to make money from claims. Insurance is there to help make you whole, not to make you a profit. So we'll see people lying about what property was there, which ultimately you and I pay for. And then sometimes the homeowners are led to believe they have damage. We've seen, I could show you tons of videos where a contractor goes up and is hitting the house with a hammer, peeling up shingles and telling the homeowner you have hail damage. They'll file a claim, and when they come out, it's obviously man-made damage. So we see a lot of that. We've seen this on a few different disasters, is vetting your volunteers and nonprofits. You say you're from Team Rubicon. We see Team Rubicon on a lot of disasters. We've worked with them a ton of times. But what we'll see is organizations, they are very eager to help. They're very eager to lend a hand. But it's important to vet those organizations properly, because we've seen several instances where they might have the same name as a national group, and they've got themselves in there early, and they've established themselves as a resource, and they're in there with emergency management meetings trying to lead those. It's no fault of anybody's. You have these disasters, you take whatever help you can get. But we need to be very careful because we've seen theft of resources, donated items, things like that. And we appreciate anyone that wants to help, but when they're actively trying to defraud people in the middle of a disaster, that's something we don't need. So if you run across one of these groups, communication is the key. Talk to your other counties. There's one particular group that when they go to another county and I see they're responding, I call that county and I say, here's what I dealt with in the past, just so you know. And I think it's important that we all have that communication so that we can protect the Iowans. And then obviously, how much control should those be allowed? I know Team Rubicon, the first thing they do is they come in where you need us. It's not, here's what we're doing, it's where do you need us? So that's just something to keep in mind as well. We already covered this pretty well. Our main mission is provide assistance to local, county, and state law enforcement. We enforce criminal violations. We also conduct covert operations to detect fraud. We've had in the past had someone inspect a roof, an engineer come up, certify there's no damage. And if we get complaints on contractors, we call them over to give us an estimate. So we have done that quite a bit. We will assist market regulation with canvassing and data collection in disaster areas and more. We're there to help Iowans and we're there to provide deterrence for fraud. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to David Sullivan.
My area is more after the claim has happened, but just to hold the room here, who here has ever read their homeowner's insurance policy? And I'm assuming everybody out here has a home. Well, that's more than I normally. How about the last 12 months you read it? So I'll have people, and I was in Pearson last Friday for a community event they had. So people were coming up to my table and we were talking. I've been with XYZ company for 30 years. That's awesome. But you've had 30 different policies with that company. And whatever the date of loss is, that policy is the one that they care about. They don't care about the other 29. So they're going to look at what was the date of loss? Did it happen during the policy period? Because if it happened 2 days before, then it's a different policy. It's a different contract they're going to look at. Did it happen to the property that we insured? And, was it caused by a covered cause of loss? So those are the first things they're going to look at. And again, as Matt said, the time to have that conversation and understand what you have is not when you're ready to file a claim. It's a month before that or a day before. So again, every time you get mail from an insurance company, your current insurance company, open it up, read it, because they might send out an endorsement, something changing. And what we see a lot of right now is a lot of policies have 2 deductibles. So if you get anything that's not wind and hail, there's going to be a deductible, maybe $1,000. So if you have a fire, but if you have a wind and hail event, so anything to your exterior, this might be 2% of your whatever your house is insured for. Well, if you have a $300,000 house, 2%, it's a big difference. So those are things to understand. There also might be schedules within the policy that limits when you get to a certain age. My roof on my house is 15 years old. When I got my renewal in April for a May renewal, it says specifically right on there, my roof is at ACV going forward. Now, I could go out and shop around. Nobody with that company's put a gun to my head. I don't have to accept that renewal. I don't have to pay it. I can go out and shop around 100 other companies. But pretty much every company out there, if you have a roof that's 13 to 15 years old, it's going to be actual cash value. That's what the market, that's what they're doing now. Because again, to limit their exposure. So people have to be aware of that. And again, so that's what we stress is reading the policy, understanding what you're purchasing. Most people, the biggest purchase, the biggest investment they ever have will be that house. Whether it's $150,000 starter home or whatever your mansion is, that's your biggest investment. And people think, oh, I got a policy. Well, what you have is a contract. Just like if you rent a car, get a mortgage, you have a contract with that company. It's not a lottery ticket. It's not a maintenance policy. It's a contract that says specifically what they will do and what you will do. There's a whole section in there, and I don't have it with me today, but it says what you have to do after a loss, what you, the homeowner, has to do. Mitigate it, get it tarp, keep it, the damages from getting worse. Report it to us. I have a complaint on my desk right now that I got to look at. That it's 2 years. It's actually over 2 years. They're finally now filing a claim. Most insurance policies have either a 1 year or 2 year. If you haven't filed a lawsuit within 1 or 2 years, depending on the contract is, they're done. You can't do anything against them anymore. So again, if you haven't filed a claim for 3 years, you certainly haven't filed a lawsuit. And so the insurance company's like, we never even knew about it. You have to tell us. You have to file a claim and let us know what's happening, and then we'll come out and look at it and determine what coverage is. Again, it's a legal contract, not a lottery ticket. And probably the biggest one for this room is there's not a homeowner's policy out there, nor a commercial policy that covers flood. If that water came up from the creek and went into the windows, they'll have to file an insurance claim so they can get a denial letter, so they can give that to FEMA and see if they can get help. But that's all the insurance company can do is give you a denial letter, which will help you with FEMA's paperwork. So a lot of times you'll see 60 Minutes did an article or a news show on down in Florida, and they were going on about this one company that had 60, almost 70% rate of denial. Well, it was a storm surge event. there was no wind and hail damage to any of these homes. It had flooded in at the very end, like the last 30 seconds, they mentioned that it was a flooding event. But the company had to have, the homeowners file a claim, get the denial letter so they could go to FEMA. So it wasn't like the insurance company was evil and bad. They were doing a process to help people out with FEMA, but there was never going to be any coverage under a homeowners or most commercial policies for flooding. It's either through the National Flood Program, or there are a few companies that will write a standalone policy that will help you with flooding. But there again, you have to read those very carefully. I know there's one company that has a flood policy. It specifically excludes all your personal property. It's going to cover the drywall, the carpet, and your furnishing. It doesn't cover any personal property. So your 35 years of Christmas decorations, those are gone. There's no insurance for those underneath that policy. And even with a national flood plan, it's very limited what they cover for personal property. And the other thing I ran into in Pearson's a very small town. If there's a house in that town that's from the 70s, it's probably the newest house in town. But a lot of these people didn't understand there's two terms. There's a market value. So that's what you can, I come to your house and I want to buy it. It's worth this much on the market. Insurance doesn't care about that. You might have a $300,000 house that the market would, you could sell it to your neighbor for. But when you rebuild that house from a flood or a fire, it might cost $450,000. That's the amount you need to insure it for. So that's what you need to look for is what people need to look for is what is that going to cost to rebuild? I knew at one time in the Des Moines area, $150 a square foot would build you a house. Now you're probably closer to 250, 300 square feet. Talk to a local builder and probably get a better number. But if you're going to do brand new construction without markup or anything else, it's probably going to be 250 to 300 is what I would estimate. So figure out how many square feet you have times 300, and you'll probably be safe. But that's what the company is looking at is what it's going to cost to rebuild that house, not what you can sell it for. And a lot of people have problems with that is, I can only sell it for 300. I'm not going to insure it for 450. If you don't insure it correctly, you could run into what they call a co-insurance penalty. So if you don't have your house insured for at least 80%, if it's a $100,000 house, have it insured for at least 80,000. If you're only at 60,000, there might be a 20% penalty there. And again, it's built into the contract. Again, the insurance companies write the contracts, but you don't have to go with State Farm, Liberty Mutual, American Family. There's hundreds of companies out there, but pretty much all the companies are writing the same policy. Because again, those policies have to be submitted and approved by the state. There's certain standards, minimums that they have to have in these policies. That's in that handout one I gave you guys. Again, and being brutally honest with your insurance company, telling people, people want to save money. They don't want to pay $3,000 a year for house insurance. But if you have solid oak doors in your house and you have 34 of them, best tell your insurance agent or the company, I have 34 solid oak doors. I have hardwood floors, not whatever vinyl laminate, because that's going to help them determine the value for that house. And when you have a claim, that's what they're going to expect to find. So if you tell them you have hollow core doors because you want to have a lower premium, that's what they're going to pay for. They're not going to replace your solid oak doors because you've, in essence, misled them or lied to them on the application. And if it's a big enough material issue, they could look at that misrepresentation on the application and say, we're not covering anything. You've lied to us on this application. What we insured something that wasn't there. And so there's no coverage. We've certainly seen that. And that's, sometimes that's an agent issue, but a lot of times it's a consumer issue. Again, financial flags, probably the most public adjuster issues that we've had has not been with their work product itself and them stealing the money. So it's legal in their contracts to have a limited power of attorney. So they say, I'm your public adjuster, kind of like an attorney. I'm going to represent you in this matter, but I'm going to get 10% of the claim. So the insurance company pays $100,000. The first 10 is going to that public adjuster who's representing you. And they'll want the check sent to them because their name it'll be public adjuster, it'll be my mortgage company, and it'll be David Sullivan. All three names will be on the checks. If you have a mortgage. But what we've run into is the public adjuster will sign your name, sign the mortgage company's name, with no authorization. He'll cash those checks and you never see it. He's basically stolen that money because you've given them that power of attorney. Their name is on the check. So again, I can't stress enough, the time to have a contractor, is right now. You know who you're gonna call if you need siding work, roof work done, and there's no rush. That was probably the biggest thing I kept telling people up in Pearson. It's like, well, I gotta get on their list. All right, even if you get in their list today, they're gonna be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks before they ever actually have a crew at your house with materials. Take a deep breath, read the contract, understand what you're getting into, who sometimes contractors will want their name on the checks too, so they know they're getting paid. Again, that's up to, the homeowner and them. That's a agreement, what is that homeowner comfortable with? But, know who you're gonna have work done, who's gonna be reputable. And there's so many, during Greenfield, the insurance division, as people were applying to be peddlers in that town, we were calling their insurance companies. They would give us a certificate of liability saying, I have liability insurance, I have work comp insurance, and we would call them up. And there were multiple. And I won't say it was fraud, but policies cancel. They're only good for 6 months or a year, and they gave the wrong one. Because again, we're dealing with salespeople out here, not the owners of the company. And so it's like, hey, this isn't a valid, we're not going to tell the city of Greenfield that your license application is approved because this certificate of liability is inaccurate. It's not in force right now. And so then the owner would, oh yeah, I switched insurance 2 weeks ago, and we would get a new certificate and we could approve their application at that point. But every consumer should be, hey, this certificate of liability, I'm going to call it. I'm going to verify that this thing's accurate. Call the references. If a contractor gives you 6 references, I'd call all 6. I'd also look in Iowa courts online. Is that contractor having to sue his customers? Because that would tell you, if a customer is withholding money and the contractor has to sue him, there's something more going on here. Now, best contractor in the world could have that happen once or twice. But if you pull up the contractor you want to do business with and they have 35 lawsuits out there, I myself wouldn't hire that contractor. But again, there's no immediate rush to get anything done. Even now in Greenfield, it's 2 years later, they're still in a slow recovery process. And the last handout is about contractors, what they can and can't do. Again, in the Iowa Insurance Division, we want contractors, we need contractors, like Iowa consumers do, but they can be the best contractors they can be, but they can't be involved in the insurance process. They can write an estimate, give it to the homeowner or whoever has hired them. The homeowner can advocate for themselves. That's always, in my opinion, the best and also the cheapest, because that 10% or whatever the fee is, the homeowner gets that. And the claim process seems like it's this super complicated process. It's really not. Again, if you've never went through it before, it's hard to convince people of that. But provide information to the insurance company. You file the claim. This happened to me on this date. This is what happened. I'm invoking the policy. They'll send somebody out to write an estimate, and that person's going to be human. Are they going to see everything that is damaged up there? No. They might measure 30 feet of gutter, and it ends up being 45 feet. Well, there's a supplement process that'll get corrected. Again, if you get 3 estimates from 3 different contractors, and they're all in that 35,000 range, and the company's at 30. Oh, let's go line by line. What are we missing here? Oh, there's 15 feet here. There's 2 extra bundles of waste. Maybe we didn't calculate enough waste, and they'll figure that out. Now, if the contractor's wanting $500 a square and the going rate in the area is 300, now the insurance company and the consumer, there may be a disagreement there, and the consumer either has to say, well, I want this contractor and he's worth this extra 200, I'm going to pay that out of my pocket. Or he can find a contractor that can do the price for the insurance, the going rate in the area. Because again, companies are not going to pay for assumed or potential damage. So if you have a car accident, hit a deer, the adjuster's going to come out and look at it and say, yep, the front bumper, the grill, and the hood. I can see those. I'm going to write those up. And the body shop might be sitting there going, well, there's the fan, the radiator, and the starter motor all blown. Well, when you have it tore down, I'll come back, you send me photos, and we can document those other things are damaged. Then I can add them to my estimate. But no insurance company, because once they pay that money, they're never going to get it back. So they're not going to pay on assumed damage. They're also not going to pay for maintenance. We see it a lot with roofs. They have 40-year-old roof way outside of its lifespan, and it slowly is leaked. And there's rot to the sheeting, the decking. Specifically in the insurance policy says they're not going to pay for wet or dry rot. And so when the roofer gets up there, he tears off the shingles that the company is paying for. He's like, well, we got to replace, 15 sheets of plywood. Yeah, you do. To put a good roof back on that. But the insurance company isn't going to pay for it because it's excluded under their policy. That's going to have to be the homeowner. And so an adjuster and a contractor or a public adjuster can look at the same house after it's torn out and write the same estimates or different estimates. It's still both be right. The contractor says, yep, we have to replace these 15 sheets, and he's totally right. But the company is also right in saying we're not going to pay for it because it's not covered under our policy. How that damage was caused isn't covered. So when I hear contractors say we're always getting underestimated or underpaid, well, some of that has to do with coverage too. Again, it's not a maintenance policy. It's not a lottery ticket. It's written in there specifically by the contract, which the insurance company wrote. What is and isn't going to be covered. And that's really what when they go to court, that's what they're going to defend themselves on. Wet and dry rot, that's what caused that damage to the decking. It's not covered. We're not going to pay for it. And I would say 100% of the time, they're going to win those cases. So again, the contractors on that last handout can be very, again, get a good estimate, be a resource, answer questions for the insurance company. If an insurance contractor calls them, I tell the contractor, sure, answer their questions. But when you start coding code or line of sight or things like that, or advocating for a certain dollar amount, that's where you're starting to act as an unlicensed public adjuster, and you're going to get a educational letter from the division, a warning letter, and we do take cease and desist actions against contractors. That's a legal process that we administratively go through with the insurance commissioner. We present the facts to them, and then he issues a cease and desist to that contractor. And again, we're not looking for a pound of flesh or any sort of fines and fees. On the ones we've done, it's all been correct the behavior, change your contract, change your salesman's behavior. Again, be the best contractors you can be, but don't be unlicensed public adjusters. What we're pushing out there. You got any questions?
I'm impressed. We talked about insurance after a full belly of lunch and everyone's heads are still upright. That's pretty good. I just want to reiterate that we're here as a value add to your response. We want to help. We want to make it easier. We want to take things off your plate. So please call us if you need us. More than likely, Jeremy will be calling, or one of my investigators will be asking where you want us. What are your needs, things like that, because we're truly there to help. So,
and if you have consumers coming in and we're not there yet, I have my business card up here. You can certainly direct them to the insurance division, and we have dedicated property and casualty teams, and we can pull other people from within the division to help answer questions for consumers.
We threw a lot at you. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just curious, is this just for disasters, like natural disaster things, or are your services like where you take the trailer and things like that for fires? If you're requested to deploy, like kind of what's your scope or deployment criteria?
We haven't done fires. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like an apartment complex, if there's a need, I would think that we could go down there and answer questions. Especially, I mean, most of those would be rental policies, but we'll do what we can to get out there and help consumers if there's a need, so.
I know that we didn't have the disaster trail at the time, but the building that collapsed in Davenport, we sent one of our staff members over there for a community event to answer questions to the residents of that building. So certainly if we don't come out on site to deliver packets door to door, if you're having a community event, our consumer advocate or my team, we can come out to community events and sit at a table and answer, be a resource for the individuals. And that, of course, like in Pearson, that was 5-6 days after the actual event.
Thank you.
What's the process to activate you? You know, if we have a disaster, if we have a storm, and we want to request that you bring the trailer down, or how do you guys get activated and get to a scene?
Yeah, so our information's on our website. If you want to call and request, I'll be honest with you, the ones where we've been needed so far, it's just us monitoring weather, monitoring claims, monitoring, who's going to be in the area, feedback from some of our texts that we get. If someone says, oh, you should see, like at Tumwa, it wasn't uncommon. Some of those people said 6 contractors have been at their house that morning.
Unreal.
So when we see that there's a lot of high pressure sales or there's a need and not understanding, we've self-dispatched, I think 100% of the times we're there before we needed to ask, but that doesn't mean that we might not realize that there's a situation going on. So please do call us and be happy to help.
Kind of along those lines, I know you mentioned like Greenfield and going through, you do some canvassing and you've used the Orion app. Have you integrated at all, like with county EMA? So for instance, if we had a tornado here, either between us or our fire departments, we go out with the Orion, the Futurity app. We've already probably got a pretty good incident going in terms of canvassing that, and depending on who we run into, there might be an owner there might not be, but one of those questions that gets asked is, do you have insurance? How much is your policy for? They may or may not know off the top of your head, but we might have some of that work already done, that if we can integrate, either bring you into our incident or how Cameron's not here, he knows more of the ins and outs of it, but that could save you a little bit of work that way, but also make it a little bit more seamless when we're trying to figure out what's going on. And that way we don't have to double or triple canvas an area.
And that's been our goal for the last year or two, is a single point information, especially, where we might get a call from the governor's office and based on all of our information gathering, we all might have 3 different numbers, where if we had a single point where, maybe emergency management is doing a questionnaire and they can't make it out there, but we show up there and we're asking questions and, oh, look on this list, they want to know this, we'll ask.
I can say the first things we do is contact emergency management in that county, wherever we're going to. We just were deployed here last week. Contact emergency management. We were working in 2 different counties. I made a plan up with them that here's what we can do. What do you need? And then I ended up actually getting all the addresses that they had, created a plan for us to kind of deploy and go talk to those people. They put it out on their Facebook page that, hey, we're going to be in this area. Dave's there to talk to them about, market regulation and those type of things. So we try to work really closely with emergency management. It's your guys' show. We're there to help.
Which is
So,
where integrate
that's what we do.
Right. Yeah. I perked up when I heard that you'd use it, because that would be a good when we can get linked up, and then you've got those addresses. Obviously, we're gonna have to go back.
Even if we could do it beforehand, so we could see what each other's looking for, I think.
We're learning all the time, so it's like.
Yeah, I mean, we try to stay in really good communication with emergency management because half the time we don't even know the towns. Which we're getting to see a lot of Iowa, but I don't think you have to ask many firefighters where cops are gonna park in an emergency. It's right in their way. So we just wanna know like simple things like, what kind of response are you looking for? What are are there supplies that you need? Is there anything, we're there to help, so.
Matt, have you been invited to any of these multi-agency resource centers that like a week, 2 weeks, 10 days after a disaster, a lot of counties will bring in multiple, nonprofits and other agencies in and put them all in one spot? Having you guys there would be a phenomenal resource.
I did on Friday.
So you were up there for the mark. Gotcha.
I mean, very small. There were 4 agencies there, and we've done it in Greenfield. A lot of times our consumer advocate or like the gentleman from the division that went down to the building that collapsed, there was some sort of agency, somebody else had set it up and invited us
As a table. Just pull your
Yeah, we do a lot of
trailer in now.
In those cases, we didn't pull the trailer, but we didn't have it at that point. But we do a lot of flooding also, which unfortunately we can't do a whole heck of a lot for them because the policy doesn't cover it. But we can help direct them. Hey, you do have to file a claim so you can get that FEMA denial letter for FEMA, things like that.
Matt, have y'all been in front of the IAMA, the Iowa Emergency Management Association? Have you what's the best opportunity for Matt to share this message with IAMA, you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 districts that are out there. They each have, a meeting every couple months. So that would be an opportunity. I know you spoke down at the Center last year to Human Resource Council. That's another organization that's pretty heavy attended by local emergency managers. So there are always opportunities out there.
Wherever we can lend assistance, we'd be more than happy to. We do a lot of consumer outreach. We do a lot of education. So even if it's just coming into a town and talking with citizens or all the way up to emergency management, we're more willing to do that. We do a lot of interactions. We do senior financial exploitation that involves insurance and security. So we do a lot of elderly scams. That's kind of where Jeremy works. So we're always out in the community doing something. So wherever we can help you, we will.
Brett brought up the really good point is the information sharing, the damage assessment process. As we heard from residents in Pleasant Hill with the tornado they had in 2024, that just the fatigue and the mental stress that goes along with like 3 times a day, every day for 3 weeks, somebody else was showing up on their property. And sometimes it was contractors soliciting, sometimes it was it was a local damage assessment team. Then it was somebody from the joint damage assessment team from FEMA. Then it was another group of people from FEMA doing community outreach. And they just were like, we're sick of this. And the more we can help do a customer service focus and reduce the number, still have a team of people that can address what their concerns are, but not keep just hitting them with it, like showing up on their driveway, asking questions every couple of days. So.
Well, and that really became evident on day like 4 of Greenfield. They've been through so much, and that was kind of the day where I think they just had enough. They just had, and that's something we've tried to do, and it's kind of one of the things I laugh at myself about because we got the ArcGIS, and we built our own system and everything, and got it all done. And then someone said, I think Orion does that. And they just open a program and it's like, oh, they're 1 week's work. But I think that there is a path. I would like to purchase things as simple as tablets that when we get there, if you're a volunteer firefighter or you're, a volunteer or someone going door to door on searches, if we all integrate our information and we can just be a one-stop shop, because people are going to want that data reported. And I'm just like you, I don't like to interrupt people 6 times.
And your point about if we're giving, everybody's rolling up their own damage assessment and those numbers are different, then none of them are going to be trusted just because they are different. One of them's probably closer and accurate than another one. But if those numbers are different than, for example, the governor's office or wherever, they're to be like, why do I have these range of numbers? And so getting our stuff together.
Well, the really nice thing about Ryan is, being website based, a trooper can use it, a volunteer firefighter can use it. I think the work, and I would be really happy to jump in and start this work, is coming up with what data is absolutely needed and filling that out. So that when we have a disaster, we're not sitting there trying to enter what we need. Another thing in Greenfield, when we got there initially, I mean, there were still some search and recovery operations. You have 5 different organizations with 5 different signals on the door. Some of them were the 4 corners with this, and then some of them were a circle, and you had no idea, depending on what training you went through, what it actually meant. So I think that if we had that mapping software, we could say, oh, someone checked this, there's no injuries, there's this many people that live here, good to go, let's move on.
We are very much that communication is key. We're going to be calling and, we want to only do what you want us to do. And then, this is what I think, just dealing with these last few things we've dealt with is we want that line of communications open so that we want to accomplish the goal, right? So if we're communicating and we're all on the same page, then we can accomplish the goal that we need to help the citizens. So that's the big thing.
We want to be an asset, not hinder you.
Yeah, we don't want to hinder
get in your way. Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm going to pivot a little bit from that. You shared a little bit about what you're noticing with insurance coverages and changes. Our last 2 apartment fires, what we've noticed is that there's been a requirement on the part of the property management that tenants have insurance. Are you seeing that as a trend?
A requirement that tenants have insurance, like
Yes,
these
and
contracts?
there was like a liability insurance and then a renter's insurance that would cover their personal property.
I think that's something we've seen in contracts for a while, like.
Yeah, we see it with larger, maybe I don't have it with my 3 rental houses, but a large corporation, one, they want to make sure you, the tenant, has liability. So if you trash the apartment, they can not only go after you for the deposit, but also the liability. And then also they know that their insurance isn't going to cover any of your personal property, but we're requiring you, similar to a mortgage company. If you go and pay your house off with cash, nobody's going to require you to check that it has flood insurance. But that mortgage company says, we want to make sure that it has flood insurance because it's in a floodplain. Having that outside organization that has an interest in it, that's why they're pushing it. But again, if you own a house without a mortgage, you should be checking it if you need flood insurance yourself. But just most people they don't consider it.
And it might be something that's kind of spreading because I'm used to college town contracts, and every lease you're going to have rental insurance, and a lot of people write their own leases. So it might just be something that's coming to Des Moines that they're improving their lease with.
It was super helpful with recovery because the tenants had something to fall back on if they went a step beyond just the liability coverage.
Right.
I was gonna say, do you see much confusion between what's liability insurance and what's true property coverage for tenants? I think in the past we've run into some issues like that where they thought they're covered, but no, it was just liability on what gets written into those lease contracts.
Yeah, I think the saving grace is when the tenant purchases it, that's their first contact, and obviously the property owner knows his insurance, so it almost sorts it out a little bit. Where we see the maybe confusion is where someone didn't purchase it, now they're trying to go after the apartment complex's insurance and there's no coverage allowed. That's where it is. So it's actually nice that it's in the lease. It notifies people you should have this coverage.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong, but most insurance companies aren't going to just issue you a renter's liability. There's going to be a minimum 15,000 for your contents, 1,000 for medical. If somebody else gets hurt, there's going to be maybe 100,000 for the liability. So many months for additional living expense. There's going to be a base policy that they have to file with us that they're allowed to sell in Iowa. Now, obviously, if you have a lot of things, maybe 15,000 isn't enough. Another thing to talk about on that subject, if you read your insurance contract, there are limits. So if you have a lot of firearms, the base policy may only cover up to 5,000. If you have cash, gold, anything like that in the house, $1,000. silverware. There's a very specific, mainly your high theft items are gonna be listed in the policy for a specific dollar amount. So if you have $10,000 stuffed into your mattress, only 1,000 is gonna be covered. And you better have some documentation that you had it. Cause they're gonna want that.
To your point, you might be hearing him say, gosh, who keeps money under the mattress? We can attest to the fact that that's a thing. Firearms and all of the things that you're talking about, really expensive items and cash, those were realities that we were facing.
I went to I used to be an origin and cause investigator with American Family and went there with our team and basically this bedroom, the fire was in the garage, bedroom was on top of it. The wife, we did the inspection, husband pulls up as we're getting ready to leave. He's like, can I get in the house? Like, no, the fire department, they've let us in, but not anybody else. So we went over there, we crawled through over the fire hole and in his drawer, chest of drawers next to his bed, he had $20,000 in an envelope his wife didn't know about. Wasn't burned up. He was a happy camper that day. His wife, I don't know. She was giving him some looks. We got out of there at that point. Why he had that much cash sitting there, but yeah, it's and then with firearms, I mean, it doesn't take very much to rack up. But there are limits in that policy. Again, it's not a lottery ticket.
As far as the documentation for insurance, are they wanting it on the policy prior to any accidents happening? Or are you looking at pictures? Like if someone were to take pictures of whatever their property is, if they have hobbies or collectibles or whatever, then pictures are sufficient?
A lot of times, but it's good to, even take a video. Like me being an insurance geek, I've videotaped, it's been several years now, I need to update it, but just videotape walking through the house. That video is with my brother at his house and I have his video. So if something happens, now again, is it gonna cover everything? And if you have a firearm, you're gonna wanna get close, you wanna, detail what that, the serial number and any widgets, gadgets, or anything that increases the value. And that's why, like on jewelry, the companies require you, if you want over $1,000 on, let's say, your wife's wedding ring, they want a jeweler to look at. They want an appraisal. What is it gonna cost to replace that? And that appraisal is gonna be very detailed. How many carats, how many, what clarity. It's gonna have all that written down. And that's what they're gonna base the insurance coverage off of. So again, if you can have a household inventory, photographs of high-end items, even, I had a brother, again, before I was an insurance geek, and his house blew up. We spent weeks going through just room by room, looking at old family pictures. Hey, yep, there was a dresser in that room. It was 4 drawers. And trying to reconstruct things. I don't recommend it. Very stressful and it sucks. But yeah, having photographs.
Do you think it should be updated on an annual basis or?
And there's actually an app out now in our post-disaster guide that the National Association of Insurance Commissioners made, where you can go room by room and document items. And then it'll store it for you remotely. In fact, I think we have some packets out in the car that would have that information in it.
If not, I have the.
So we recommend that, and that would be perfect for your things like your insurance, where it's logging serial numbers, receipts, things like that. So that when something does happen, you have that to fall back on.
Yeah, having that document. Now, the insurance company isn't gonna want that documentation today. They only want it after you file a claim. But now the jewelry, if you wanna have $30,000 on your firearms, then they're gonna want some documentation to support why you need that dollar amount. So they might want that up front.
So I work with Catholic Charities, and so this past year I've dealt with 4 different insurance claims, and so I fully understand the insurance process and the
I wish you'd tell me, because for 35 years, I still don't know it all.
Well, I've got 3 going at once, and we're on the tail end of 2 of them, so I'm excited about that. We had, in one of our facilities, we had a sprinkler head that there is no probable cause or documentation stating of what actually happened, but a sprinkler head on a 2nd floor came off somehow. which flooded everything, at least 2 rooms, a hallway and the first floor dining room. And so, I'm not there on a daily basis, and so I don't know all of the items that were damaged or personal items from the clients that were living there at the shelter. So when it comes to insurance, the clients couldn't get anything back. So
Now, the one thing I would say there, fortunately, in a water loss like that, I wouldn't use the word flooding, because that's water from a plumbing device, which isn't different than a stream.
it's different.
So you want to be careful.
Now you got David excited.
I know.
I mean, but in that case, don't take everything to the dumpster. Lay it out in the yard.
Yeah, we
Take photographs of what is there, because that's much easier in a water loss like that than in a fire. Because,
Yeah.
But even there in a fire, you can say, you know what, here, here's the stone table, here's the chair, the metal frame of the chair. We can document that those things existed. And a lot of times when an insurance company's investigating a fire, they'll pull those things out and lay them in the yard as documentation for the homeowner.
Yeah.
Here's the frame of that, whatever glass table.
We did, because it was dealing with water, it was a lot easier to potentially dry out or wash and have it be, if it was clothing or whatever, then it was easy to give back. But as far as if an insurance company is saying that for personal items, this is your limit, but you've got someone that has a lot more personal items than others. So that's where I'm questioning the documentation.
You're probably in a different situation than the standard homeowner, because you're having people live in your facility. But yeah, whatever that policy limit is that's the most the companies agreed to cover. Now I have seen it, and it's normal. If they're going to pay policy limits on the house, it's a $200,000 house, but it's going to cost $250 to rebuild. Here's your $200. Most of the time in that $250, they'll take your $5,000 deductible. So now we owe you $245. Then we'll enforce the limit of $200. And so you're going to get the full $200. You're not going to get the deductible taken off of that. In the non-covered items is where they'll absorb your deductible. But again, whatever the policy limit is, that's the most they've agreed to. Now, there are demolition costs, and there's other things within the policy that could increase that a little bit, but not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
Quick scenario. Steve Dressel from Iowa Legal Aid. We've run into a scenario where somebody was insured by somebody and was discouraged after a disaster from filing a claim because of deductibles and so forth, and saying your rates will go up. And then that company canceled the insurance and left the market. And now they're trying, every company that they've approached to get insured since then, because the other company left, has said, you got to fix the problem that this company didn't apparently cover or insure. Or they insured it, but it was above deductible or whatever. And so they're in this sort of conundrum that they can't supposedly get insurance until they fix something that the insurance company wouldn't fix.
Well, so if company A said the damage is below your deductible or potentially not covered, and then they didn't like the Iowa market, we had quite a few of those companies.
Right.
So that's problem one. And they followed the policy, if it is under their deductible, again, assuming they did. But company B is coming along going, yeah, we'd love to insure your house, but you need to make the repair. We want to insure a repaired house that's ready to go. And so that is
We ran into this in a Tumwa with an individual who's defrauded. So the contractor made the claim on his behalf, received a check, forged a check, left, and now he can't be insured because he still has existing damage. So I would be interested in seeing the facts of the case, deciding if it would be a market regulation or a fraud case. Be more than happy to take a look at it.
I didn't bring my disclaimer with me, but there is, I hate hypotheticals because everything, whether it's criminal or civil and the insurance, everything is gonna be so case specific. I love it when people, I don't love it, that's sarcasm. People come, oh, my neighbor got this covered, right? Every one of your neighbors has a different insurance company, a different policy. You know, maybe you have big oak trees and they don't, and you know, the big oak trees kept your house from getting the hail damage that they got. Everything is case specific, you know, what did you have for insurance on that date? What damage did your house actually incur? You know, everybody wants, who doesn't want somebody else to pay for a new roof on your house? But you know, that's not, again, the contract of insurance is, it's a legal contract. They're only gonna pay what they owe. So, yeah, but the specifics would be interesting. But that's very typical if you've been defrauded or don't have coverage, you're gonna have to get that repaired before another company will take it on.
But I don't want to hold everybody up with the time, but we'll hang around here if anyone else has any questions. But thank you so much for
Thank you guys.
inviting us.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you for being a part of our presentation.